They say blood calls to blood. That destiny runs through our veins like an ancient river we can't escape. But what happens when you discover the blood flowing through you carries secrets darker than the night itself? This is the story of Alex Carter. A story of inheritance, of choices, and of a legacy written in blood. Alex Carter had always known his grandmother was different. There was something about Eleanor Carter that set her apart from other elderly women in their quiet Massachusetts town. Maybe it was the way she avoided direct sunlight, preferring the soft glow of evening. Maybe it was how she never seemed to age in his memories, looking nearly the same at 80 as she did in photographs from decades ago. Or maybe it was the locked room on the third floor of her Victorian mansion, the one she called her memory chamber, where no one was ever permitted to enter. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October when everything changed. Alex, now 24 and working as a historical researcher at the local museum, received the call that Eleanor had passed away peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was small, attended by a handful of neighbors who barely knew her and couldn't tell stories about a woman who had lived as a ghost among them. 3 days after the burial, Alex stood in his grandmother's house with a brass key in his hand. The lawyer had given it to him along with a sealed envelope bearing his name in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. She left specific instructions, the lawyer had said, his face unusually pale. This key opens a room on the 3rd floor. She wanted you, and only you, to see what's inside. And she wanted you to read this letter first. Now, alone in the dim hallway of the old house, Alex broke the seal and unfolded the yellowed paper. My dearest Alex. Asterisk if you're reading this, I'm finally free. Free from a life that stretched far too long, free from memories that refused to fade, and free from a hunger I spent decades learning to suppress. Asterisk. Asterisk you deserve the truth, and I've been too much of a coward to tell you while I could still see your face when you learned it. I wasn't born Eleanor Carter. I was born Eleanor Blackwood in 1847. Yes, you read that correctly. I lived for 177 years, though I only looked human for the last 40. Asterisk. Asterisk I was turned into a vampire in 1869 by a creature who promised me eternal love and gave me eternal damnation instead. For 90 years, I lived as one of them. I fed, I killed, I became the very monster that haunts your history books and horror films. Asterisk. Asterisk but in 1959, something impossible happened. I met a doctor, a researcher who had dedicated his life to understanding vampirism not as supernatural curse, but as a biological condition. Dr. James Carter, your grandfather, though you never met him, he created a cure. It took him 30 years, but he found a way to reverse the transformation. Asterisk. Asterisk I became human again, Alex. Truly human. I could feel the sun on my skin without pain, taste food instead of ash, and my heart beat again after 9 decades of silence. Asterisk. Asterisk but the memories remained. All of them. Every life I took, every person I destroyed. That's my real curse, the one I couldn't cure. Asterisk. Asterisk I'm telling you this because you need to know what runs in your bloodline. My vampiric DNA may be dormant, neutralized by the cure, but it's still there in my cells, passed down to your mother, and then to you. You're not in danger of turning, the cure ensured that, but you carry markers in your blood that vampires can sense. Asterisk. Asterisk you're going to meet one, Alex. I've seen the signs, felt the presences circling closer to our family these past months. They're curious about me, about what I became, about the cure that shouldn't exist. Asterisk. Asterisk when you meet her, and yes, it will be a her, I've seen her in my dreams, you'll have a choice to make. The same choice I made so many years ago. Will you see the human inside the monster, or the monster inside the human? Asterisk. Asterisk the room upstairs contains my journals. Every year, every life, every moment of my transformation and my cure. Read them. Learn from my mistakes. And when the time comes, choose wisely. Asterisk. With all my love and all my regret, Eleanor. Alex's hands trembled as he lowered the letter. The hallway seemed to stretch impossibly long, the shadows deepening despite the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Part of him wanted to walk away, to burn the letter and the key and forget any of this had happened. But he was a researcher. His entire life revolved around uncovering hidden histories, piecing together stories from fragments and evidence. This was his own history, his own blood story, and he needed to know. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The locked room was at the end of the hallway, its dark wood door unmarked except for a small brass plate engraved with a single word, Memoria. The key turned smoothly in the lock, as if the mechanism had been maintained despite decades of disuse. The door swung open silently. The room was surprisingly bright. Tall windows on 3 walls let in floods of natural light, illuminating walls lined floor to ceiling with leather-bound journals. A large desk sat in the center, its surface covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and what looked like medical documents. Alex walked slowly into the room, his footsteps muted by a thick Persian rug. He approached the desk, drawn to a photograph sitting in a silver frame. It showed a young woman in a Victorian dress, her dark hair pulled back severely, her eyes staring directly at the camera with an intensity that made Alex's breath catch. She looked exactly like his grandmother, but also completely different. There was something predatory in her gaze, something ancient and hungry. Written on the back in faded ink, Eleanor Blackwood, 1870. 1 year after my death and rebirth. Next to it was another photograph, this one more recent, from the 1950s, judging by the style. The same woman stood next to a man in a white lab coat, but now her eyes were different. Warmer. Human. Eleanor and James, 1959. The day I came back to life. Alex spent hours in that room, reading through journals that detailed a life he could barely comprehend. Eleanor's elegant handwriting filled page after page with accounts of her years as a vampire, the euphoria of the transformation, the agony of the hunger, the gradual erosion of her humanity. But then the tone changed. In journals dated from the 1950s onward, a new thread emerged: hope. Eleanor wrote about meeting James Carter, about his radical theories regarding vampirism as a genetic mutation rather than a supernatural curse, about the dangerous experiments that eventually led to the cure. September 14, 1959 Today, I ate a strawberry. Just one strawberry. I haven't been able to taste fruit in 90 years. I cried like a child while James held me, both of us laughing and weeping because the impossible had happened. I'm alive again. Truly, wonderfully, terrifyingly alive. But I'm also aware of what I've lost. I'm mortal now. I can die. After 9 decades of immortality, the thought of death coming for me feels both like liberation and terror. James says the cure is permanent, that my DNA has been rewritten on a fundamental level. But we both know there are others out there who will want this knowledge. Vampires who want to remain vampires. Vampires who would kill to ensure this cure never spreads. We've decided to go into hiding, to live quietly, anonymously, and to destroy all the research. This gift of humanity is mine alone. I won't be responsible for unleashing chaos on both worlds, human and vampire. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the memory chamber, Alex came to the last journal. This one was recent, dated from just 3 months ago. July 28, 2024 I'm dying. Truly dying this time, of natural causes. Cancer, the doctor says. There's irony in that. I survived 90 years as a vampire, decades as a human, only to be taken down by rebellious cells in my own body. But I'm not afraid. I've lived more lives than anyone has a right to, seen the world transform beyond recognition, loved and lost and found myself again. What worries me is Alex. My grandson, who has my eyes and James's curiosity. I've felt them watching the house lately. Not vampires exactly, they wouldn't dare come this close while I still lived, but they're human servants, they're informants. They know I'm dying, and they're waiting. They'll want the cure. They'll want my journals. And when they realize I destroyed James's research years ago, they'll want the next best thing, my blood descendants. Alex carries traces of my vampiric past in his DNA. Not enough to turn him, but enough to make him valuable to the right vampire researcher. Asterisk. Or the wrong one. Asterisk. I've seen her in my dreams. A young vampire, no more than a century old. Dark hair, darker eyes, and a curiosity that mirrors Alex's own. She's coming for him, drawn by the mystery of what I became. But she's different from the vampires I knew. She questions things. She rebels against their ancient laws. Asterisk. Asterisk. I think she might be his chance to make a different choice than I did. Or she might be his doom. Either way, their meeting is inevitable now. All I can do is leave him the truth and hope he's wise enough to see beyond the obvious. Asterisk. Alex closed the journal as full darkness fell outside. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. When you meet her, you'll have a choice to make. He gathered up several of the journals, knowing he'd need to read them all to understand the full scope of Eleanor's story. As he prepared to leave the room, something caught his eye, a small wooden box on a shelf behind the desk. Inside was a glass vial filled with dark liquid, nearly black in the dim light. A note was attached, asterisk my blood, drawn the day before the cure. Keep it safe. Keep it hidden. This is what others will come seeking. Asterisk. Alex pocketed the vial, locked the room behind him, and descended the stairs. Outside, night had fully fallen over the small New England town. The street was empty, lit by the warm glow of old-fashioned lampposts. He didn't notice the figure watching from the shadows across the street. Didn't see the way her dark eyes followed his every movement with an intensity that was both predatory and strangely protective. Raven Kharon had been watching the Carter house for weeks, waiting for the old woman to die so she could finally investigate the impossible rumor that had been circulating through vampire circles for years, that Eleanor Blackwood, one of the ancient ones, had somehow become human again. Now, watching Eleanor's grandson emerge from the house carrying a stack of journals, Raven felt something unexpected. Curiosity mixed with an emotion she hadn't experienced in decades. Something that might have been empathy, or recognition, or the first stirrings of a connection she couldn't yet name. Alex Carter had just inherited more than a house and some journals. He'd inherited a mystery that would change his life forever. And Raven Kharon had just found the answer to questions she'd been asking for 100 years. Their story was about to begin. The Blackwood Museum of Historical Curiosities occupied a converted church on the edge of town, its Gothic architecture perfectly suited to housing artifacts from New England's dark past. Alex had worked there for 3 years, cataloging colonial documents and Victorian photographs, never imagining that his own family history would prove stranger than anything in their collection. Now, a week after reading Eleanor's journals, he found himself staring at a display case he'd walked past 100 times without really seeing it. Inside was a silver crucifix, an ornate stake made of ash wood, and a collection of 19th-century anti-vampire charms. "Funny, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. "How humans always thought the wrong things would protect them." Alex turned to find a young woman standing closer than should have been possible. He hadn't heard her approach, hadn't sensed any movement or presence. She simply appeared, as if the shadows themselves had coalesced into human form. She was striking in a way that made his breath catch. Dark hair fell past her shoulders in waves that seemed to absorb the museum's dim lighting. Her eyes were almost black, but caught the light in strange ways, like polished onyx. She wore modern clothes, dark jeans, a leather jacket, combat boots, but carried herself with an old-world elegance that made the contemporary outfit seem like a costume. "The museum's closed," Alex said, his voice steadier than he felt. His heart was racing, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Eleanor's words echoed. "When you meet her, you'll have a choice to make." "Is it?" The woman glanced around the empty space, a slight smile playing at her lips. "I must have missed the announcement. Or perhaps—" She stepped closer, her movements fluid and precise. "Perhaps I wanted to speak with you specifically, Alex Carter." The use of his name sent a chill down his spine. "Do I know you?" "Not yet. But I knew your grandmother. Or rather, I knew of her. Eleanor Blackwood, or should I say Eleanor Carter, in her final incarnation." The woman's smile widened slightly. "My name is Raven Kharon. And before you reach for your phone to call security, you should know that I mean you no harm. Quite the opposite, actually." Alex's hand had indeed moved toward his pocket. He froze, studying her face for signs of threat. What he saw instead was curiosity, sharp intelligence, and something that might have been loneliness. "You're one of them," he said. "Not a question." "One of them," Raven repeated, tilting her head. "Such clinical language. Your grandmother's influence, I assume." "Yes, Alex, I'm a vampire. Have been for 96 years, though I try not to dwell on the exact count. It makes me feel old. You're here for the cure. I'm here for the truth." Raven moved to the display case, examining the anti-vampire artifacts with an expression of amused disdain. "Your grandmother accomplished something that shouldn't have been possible. She reversed a transformation that our oldest scholars insist is permanent, irreversible, absolute. And then she and your grandfather destroyed all evidence of how they did it." "Good," Alex said. "The last thing the world needs is a cure that could be used as a weapon." Raven's eyebrows rose. "A weapon? Interesting perspective. Most humans would see it as a salvation, a way to eliminate the vampire threat forever. Most humans didn't read my grandmother's journals." Alex found himself relaxing slightly, drawn into the conversation despite his fear. She wrote about vampire politics, about the ancient ones who rule through fear and tradition. A cure wouldn't eliminate the threat, it would start a war. Vampires trying to destroy it, humans trying to weaponize it, and people like my grandmother caught in the middle. "People like your grandmother," Raven echoed softly. She turned from the display case, her dark eyes meeting his. "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. Your grandmother was unique, Alex. Not just because she was cured, but because she chose to be cured. She wanted humanity back, even knowing she'd lose her immortality, her strength, everything that made her powerful. She wanted to stop being a monster." "Is that what she told you? That vampirism made her a monster?" Raven moved closer again, and Alex noticed that she moved between positions rather than walking, appearing here, then there, as if the intervening space didn't quite matter. Or did she write about the complexity of it? The way the transformation doesn't erase who you are, but amplifies it? The vampire you become is built on the foundation of the human you were. Alex thought about Eleanor's journals, about the early entries filled with horror at what she'd become, but also the later ones that acknowledged the euphoria of the transformation, the intoxicating power, the way immortality had allowed her to witness history firsthand. "She wrote about both," he admitted. "The monster and the person. She said they were the same thing." "Smart woman." Raven smiled, and for a moment, she looked young and almost vulnerable. "I've spent 96 years trying to figure out where the human ends and the vampire begins. I was turned in 1928, during the height of the Jazz Age. I was 23, rebellious, angry at a world that wanted to make me small and quiet and obedient." She paused, her expression distant with memory. "The vampire who turned me promised me freedom, power, the ability to live on my own terms. And for a while, it felt like liberation. But then the years started piling up, and I watched everyone I knew grow old and die while I stayed frozen at 23. I watched the world change while I remained the same. And I started to wonder if immortality was freedom or just a different kind of cage." Alex found himself leaning against a nearby display case, fully engaged now. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand that I'm not here to hurt you or to steal your grandmother's secrets. I'm here because I'm trying to figure out if I want what she had. If I want to be human again." Raven's voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. "But I need to know the cost. What did she gain? What did she lose? Was it worth it? The journals can only tell me so much. I need to talk to someone who knew her, who can tell me about her life after the cure. And—" Raven hesitated, as if admitting something difficult. "I need to know if the cure is even still possible. If her DNA changed, if your grandfather's research is truly destroyed, then maybe what she did died with her." Alex thought about the vial hidden in his apartment, the dark liquid that might be the key to everything. Eleanor's final warning echoed in his mind. Asterisk, keep it safe. Keep it hidden. Asterisk. "I can't help you," he said carefully. "Even if I wanted to." Raven studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes seeming to look straight through him. Then she nodded slowly. "You're protecting something. Good. Your grandmother chose well when she left you her legacy." She turned toward the door, then paused. "But Alex, the curiosity isn't going to go away. For either of us." "What do you mean?" "I mean that you're going to want to understand what your grandmother was, just like I want to understand what she became. We're both searching for the same thing, the truth about the space between human and monster." She glanced back at him, her expression unreadable. "I'll be around. When you're ready to talk, you'll find me. We seem to have a habit of running into each other now." And then she was gone, the door closing softly behind her, leaving Alex alone in the empty museum with more questions than answers. He stood there for a long time, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to stay away from Raven Kharon, to protect Eleanor's secrets and destroy the vial of precure blood. But another part of him, the researcher, the historian, the part that had always been driven by curiosity, wanted to know more. Wanted to know her. That night, Alex returned to Eleanor's memory chamber and read until dawn. He learned about his grandmother's life as a vampire in vivid, sometimes horrifying detail. But he also learned about her transformation back to humanity, about the physical and emotional challenges of becoming mortal again. October 3rd, 1959 I've been human for 6 weeks now, and I'm still discovering what it means. Today I felt cold for the first time in 90 years. Truly cold, the kind that makes you shiver and seek warmth. I'd forgotten how vulnerable the human body is, how much we need to survive. But I've also remembered joy. Real joy, not the manic euphoria of the hunt or the kill, but the quiet contentment of watching a sunset and knowing it won't burn me. Of holding James's hand and feeling his warmth match mine. Of being alive in a way that matters. The hunger is gone. That's the miracle I keep coming back to. For 90 years, I was driven by an endless need that could never be truly satisfied. Now I eat regular food and it's enough. More than enough. It's everything. But I dream about it sometimes. The power, the speed, the way the world looked sharper and brighter through vampire eyes. I don't miss it, exactly, but I remember it. And sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I wonder if I made the right choice. Then I feel my heartbeat, steady and strong, and I know I did. Alex found himself wondering what Raven's journals would look like if she kept them. What would 96 years of immortality look like through her eyes? What had she lost and gained in her decades as a vampire? He was still thinking about it when the sun rose, painting Eleanor's memory chamber in shades of gold and amber. 3 days later, he found a note tucked into his jacket pocket at work. He had no idea when it had been placed there or how Raven had managed it without him noticing. The old cemetery on Thornwood Hill. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone if you want answers. Or don't come at all if you've decided to keep your grandmother's secrets buried with her. Alex stood in his office, turning the note over in his hands. This was the moment Eleanor had warned him about. The choice she'd foreseen. He could ignore the note, could destroy the vial and the journals, could walk away from this entire strange legacy and return to his normal life. But he knew he wouldn't. Because Raven had been right about one thing. They were both searching for the same truth, approaching it from opposite directions. And maybe, just maybe, together they could find answers that neither could reach alone. The choice was made. Tomorrow at midnight, he would meet her in the cemetery. And his grandmother's story would become his own. Thornwood Hill Cemetery sprawled across 5 acres of wooded hillside, its weathered headstones dating back to the 1600s. By day, it was a peaceful place, popular with historians and artists. By night, it transformed into something else entirely, a space between the world of the living and whatever lay beyond. Alex arrived 10 minutes before midnight, a flashlight in one hand and a leather satchel in the other. The satchel contained 3 of Eleanor's journals, carefully selected to show different phases of her transformation and cure. He'd also brought the vial, though he hadn't decided whether he'd show it to Raven. The cemetery was silent except for the whisper of wind through autumn leaves. Alex made his way along the main path, past weathered angels and broken obelisks, toward the oldest section where colonial graves lay beneath thick moss and shadow. "You came." Raven's voice emerged from the darkness ahead. "I wasn't sure you would." She was sitting on a marble bench near a particularly ornate mausoleum, looking as if she'd been there for hours. She wore the same leather jacket as before, but tonight her dark hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp lines of her face. "I almost didn't," Alex admitted, approaching slowly. He noticed she'd positioned herself so moonlight fell directly on her, as if to prove she cast no shadow. "Old superstitions died hard. But I keep thinking about what you said. About trying to figure out where the human ends and the vampire begins. And you think your grandmother's journals might have the answer?" "I think they might have part of it." Alex set the satchel down on the bench between them, maintaining a careful distance. "But there's something I need to understand first. You said you've been questioning whether you want to be human again. Why now? What changed after 96 years? Raven was quiet for a moment, her dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Do you know what the hardest part of immortality is, Alex? It's not the loneliness, though that's certainly there. It's not even the hunger, though that never really goes away. It's the sense that you're not moving forward anymore. The world changes, evolves, grows, but you're stuck in the moment of your death, replaying it over and over." She stood, pacing slowly among the graves. "I was turned in 1928. I've watched the world go through a depression, multiple wars, technological revolutions, social transformations that would have been unimaginable when I was human. I've seen humanity reach for the stars while I'm still tied to the earth, hunting in shadows. But you've survived all of it. You've endured. Survival isn't the same as living." Raven turned to face him. "Your grandmother understood that. She chose to live, truly live, even if it meant accepting mortality. I want to know if that choice is still possible. And if it is, I want to know if it's worth it." Alex opened the satchel and removed the first journal. This is from 1869, the year she was turned. She describes the transformation in detail, the physical changes, the psychological ones, the way her senses expanded and her humanity contracted. He handed it to Raven, who took it with surprising care. She opened to a random page and began to read aloud. "The hunger is unlike anything human language can describe. It's not simply a desire for blood, though that's certainly part of it. It's a need that consumes every thought, every sensation, until the entire world narrows down to two categories: food and not food. People I once loved became nothing but vessels of warmth and life that I wanted to drain." Raven closed the journal slowly. "She wrote that after how long?" 3 weeks. She was still newly turned, still fighting against what she'd become. "And later? Did she stop fighting?" Alex handed her a second journal. "This is from 1920, about 50 years later. She'd learned to adapt." Raven flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. "Today I walked through the Boston Common and felt nothing but contempt for the humans rushing past me. They scurry through their brief lives like insects, never understanding how fragile they are, how temporary. I've outlived 3 generations now. I've forgotten more than any of them will ever know. And I've come to accept that I am no longer one of them. I am something else. Something better." She looked up at Alex. "This is what I needed to see. The progression." She didn't just become a monster overnight. She slowly stopped seeing humans as people. "But then she met my grandfather, James Carter, the researcher." Raven's expression softened. "Tell me about him." Alex pulled out the third journal, this one dated from the 1950s. He was a medical doctor who became obsessed with understanding vampirism from a scientific perspective. He didn't believe in curses or supernatural transformations. He thought it had to be biological, something that could be understood and maybe reversed. "And your grandmother?" "She thought he was crazy. At first." Alex found a particular entry he'd marked. But he was persistent. He tracked her down, studied her, and eventually convinced her to let him run tests. It took years, but he started to see patterns in her blood work, genetic markers that had been altered during the transformation. Raven leaned forward, her usual composure cracking slightly. He actually found a biological basis for vampirism? More than that. He found a way to reverse the genetic changes. Alex met her eyes. The cure wasn't mystical or supernatural. It was medical. Gene therapy decades before gene therapy was possible. My grandfather was a genius, Raven. And my grandmother was brave enough to let him experiment on her. Brave or desperate? Both, maybe. Alex opened the journal to a specific page. Read this. It's from the day before she took the cure. Raven read silently, her expression shifting from curiosity to something deeper. Tomorrow I may die. James has explained the risks. There's a 60% chance my body will reject the treatment, that the rapid cellular changes will cause catastrophic organ failure. I could be dead within hours of the injection. Asterisk. Asterisk. But I'm taking the chance anyway. Not because I'm certain it will work, but because I can't continue existing like this. Tonight I looked at myself in the mirror. Yes, that's another myth. We cast reflections just fine, and I couldn't recognize the creature staring back. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm not human anymore, but I'm not really vampire either. I'm trapped between two worlds, belonging to neither. If the cure fails, at least I'll have tried to reclaim what I lost. And if it succeeds, I'll get to feel the sun on my skin one more time before I die. Raven closed the journal carefully, her hands trembling slightly. She was willing to die to be human again. She was willing to die to be herself again, Alex corrected. There's a difference. They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by graves of people who had made their own choices about how to live and die. Finally, Raven spoke. The cure worked, obviously. But what was it like for her? After. Alex handed her the final journal. See for yourself. This one was different from the others. The leather was newer, the pages less yellowed. Raven opened it to the first entry dated October 1st, 1959. I've been human for 7 days, and I'm still discovering what that means. My body feels strange. Heavier, slower, more fragile than I remember. I tire easily. I get hungry and thirsty in ways I'd forgotten. Yesterday I actually got a paper cut, something that hadn't happened in 90 years, and I stared at the small bead of blood in absolute fascination. Asterisk. Asterisk. But it's my blood. Human blood, pumping through human veins, keeping a human heart beating. I could cry from the beauty of it, except I already cried this morning when I saw the sunrise, and this afternoon when I tasted coffee, and this evening when I realized I was cold and James brought me a blanket. Asterisk. Asterisk. Everything is new again. Everything is real. And I am so grateful. Raven read through more entries, her expression shifting between wonder and pain. Alex watched her process Eleanor's words, seeing decades of questioning and loneliness reflected in her face. She doesn't mention regretting the cure, Raven finally said. Not once in these later entries. No, Alex agreed. But she does mention the memories. The people she hurt, the lives she took. Becoming human again didn't erase what she'd done. Nothing could erase that. Raven closed the journal and looked at Alex with an intensity that made him feel exposed. Your grandmother lived with 90 years of guilt for the rest of her human life. That's its own kind of curse. Is that what you're afraid of? The weight of your own past? Partly. Raven stood and walked to the edge of the clearing, her back to Alex. But I'm also afraid of losing what I've become. As much as I question it, as much as I long for humanity, there's a part of me that is vampire now. That sees beauty in the night, power in the hunt, freedom in immortality. Becoming human again would mean giving up all of that. My grandmother said something similar, Alex said, approaching carefully. She wrote that the cure didn't make her forget what it felt like to be vampire. She could still remember the power, the clarity, the way the world looked through immortal eyes. But she chose to live with those memories rather than the reality. Did she ever regret that choice? Even once. Alex thought about the final journal, the one he hadn't brought, written in Eleanor's last months of life. She wrote, near the end, that she regretted the person she'd been as a vampire, but she never regretted becoming human again. Even dying of cancer, even facing the end of a finite life, she was grateful for the chance to be mortal. Raven turned back to him, and in the moonlight, Alex could see tears glistening in her eyes, tears she refused to let fall. But the cure is gone. Your grandfather's research was destroyed. Even if I wanted what your grandmother had, it's not possible anymore. This was the moment. The choice Eleanor had foreseen. Alex could agree with her, could let this strange woman walk away believing the cure was lost forever. Or he could tell her the truth. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the vial of dark liquid. This is my grandmother's blood, drawn the day before the cure. My grandfather kept it, and she kept it after he died, because they both knew it might be the key to recreating the treatment. Alex held it up, the moonlight making the liquid appear to glow from within. The cure might not be gone, Raven. Not if someone with the right knowledge could analyze this blood, compare it to vampire DNA, figure out what my grandfather changed and how. Raven stared at the vial as if it were a holy relic and a curse combined. Why are you showing me this? Because my grandmother left me a choice, and I'm making it. She could have destroyed this. She had 40 years to get rid of the last evidence that the cure ever existed. But she didn't. She left it for me, knowing I might meet someone like you. Someone who needed to know the cure was possible. I'm not saying I have the ability to recreate it, Alex continued. I'm not a geneticist or a medical researcher. But you've lived 96 years. You must know vampires who have that kind of knowledge. Vampires who might be interested in understanding what happened to Eleanor Blackwood. Interested enough to help me become human? Raven's laugh was bitter. Alex, the vampire world isn't exactly pro-humanity. Most of them see the cure as a threat, not a gift. They'd rather destroy this evidence than help me use it. Then we find the ones who think differently. The ones who question like you do. The ones who might want another choice. Raven looked at him sharply. This isn't your fight, Alex. You're human. You don't understand the politics, the danger. No, but I understand research. I understand historical investigation. And I understand that my grandmother left me this legacy for a reason. Alex stepped closer. She wrote in her final journal that our meeting was inevitable. That you and I were meant to find each other. Maybe it's because we're both trying to understand the same thing from opposite sides. And what thing is that? Raven asked quietly. The space between human and monster. The question of whether we choose what we become, or whether it chooses us. Alex held the vial between them like an offering. My grandmother spent 90 years as a vampire and 40 as a human. She understood both worlds. Maybe together, we can understand what she learned. Raven reached out slowly, her fingers almost touching the vial before she pulled back. If I take this, if I try to recreate the cure, there's no going back. I'll be making enemies in the vampire world. Powerful enemies who see any threat to immortality as a threat to their control. And if you don't take it, you'll spend another century wondering what if. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Alex saw past the vampire facade to the young woman beneath, the 23-year-old from 1928 who had wanted freedom and found a cage instead. Tell me something, Alex. If you could become immortal, would you? The question caught him off guard. I don't know. Yes, you do. You've read your grandmother's journals. You know what immortality costs. So answer honestly. Would you trade your humanity for eternal life? Alex thought about Eleanor's words, about the weight of centuries and the price of power. No, he said finally. I don't think I would. Because I'd lose the one thing that makes any of it matter. The knowledge that my time is limited, that every moment counts because there won't be infinite moments to replace it. Raven smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. Your grandmother chose well when she entrusted her legacy to you. She took the vial from his hand, holding it up to the moonlight. I'll need time. Time to find someone who can analyze this, someone I can trust. And I'll need access to your grandmother's journals. All of them, not just these 3. You'll have them. On one condition. Which is, you let me help. This is my family's history, my grandmother's story. I want to see it through to the end, whatever that end might be. Raven studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You understand what you're agreeing to? Once we start down this path, vampires are going to take notice. Some will want the cure for themselves. Others will want to destroy it. And you're just a human caught in the middle. Just a human, Alex repeated with a slight smile. That's what my grandmother was too, in the end. And she survived. She had your grandfather to protect her. And I have. Alex hesitated, then decided to take the risk. I have you. Don't I? Raven's expression softened in a way that made her look genuinely young, genuinely vulnerable. Yes, she said quietly. You do. Though I'm not sure I understand why yet. Maybe because we're both searching for the same thing. Just from different starting points. Or maybe, Raven said, stepping closer until they were almost touching, it's because you see me as something other than a monster or a threat. You see me as someone making a choice. Isn't that what you are? I hope so. I really hope so. The moment hung between them, charged with possibilities and dangers neither fully understood. Then Raven stepped back, tucking the vial carefully into her jacket pocket. I need to go. There are people I need to contact, arrangements to make. But I'll find you when I have news. In the meantime. She looked at him seriously. Be careful, Alex. Don't talk about this with anyone. Don't let anyone know what you're carrying in those journals. The vampire world has eyes and ears everywhere, and curiosity about your grandmother's cure has been building for years. How do I contact you if something happens? Raven pulled a card from her pocket and handed it to him. It was blank except for a phone number written in elegant script. This number. Text only, no calls. And burn this card after you memorize the number. Paranoid, I know, but that's how you survive for 96 years. Alex took the card, studying the numbers. Will I see you again soon? Soon, Raven agreed. Though time moves differently for me than it does for you. My soon might be your weeks. Then I'll be patient. Somehow I doubt that. Raven's smile was genuine now, warm despite the coldness of her undead flesh. You're a researcher, Alex. Patience isn't exactly your strongest trait. Before he could respond, she moved, not walking, but simply transitioning from standing in front of him to being 20 feet away, perched on top of a tall monument. The speed was impossible, inhuman, a reminder of exactly what she was. Good night, Alex Carter, she called down, her voice carrying perfectly despite the distance. Thank you for trusting me with your grandmother's legacy. I promise I won't waste it. And then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows so completely that Alex could almost convince himself he'd imagined the entire encounter. Almost. He stood alone in the cemetery for a long time, the leather satchel heavy in his hand, his mind racing with everything that had happened. His grandmother's story was no longer just history. It was becoming his present, his future, his choice. As he walked back through the cemetery toward his car, Alex noticed something he'd missed before. Fresh flowers on Eleanor's grave, placed so recently they still had morning dew on their petals. White lilies, Eleanor's favorite. Raven had been here before their meeting. Had probably visited multiple times, paying respects to a vampire who had accomplished the impossible. The gesture humanized her in a way that all their conversation hadn't quite managed. She wasn't just a curious vampire seeking answers. She was someone who honored the dead, who understood respect and remembrance. Someone who might genuinely deserve the choice Eleanor's cure could offer her. Alex drove home as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, his mind already planning the next steps. He would need to catalog all of Eleanor's journals properly, create a comprehensive timeline of her transformation and cure. And he would need to research vampire biology, genetics, anything that might help him understand what his grandfather had accomplished. But more than that, he needed to understand Raven herself. Who she had been as a human, what she had become as a vampire, and who she might become if the cure worked. Because somewhere in the last few hours, this had stopped being just about his grandmother's legacy. It had become about something more immediate, more personal. It had become about Raven Kharon, and whether she deserved a second chance at humanity. 3 weeks passed before Alex heard from Raven again. 3 weeks of intensive research, of cataloging Eleanor's journals, of diving deep into whatever scientific literature existed on blood diseases and genetic mutations that might relate to vampirism. He'd also started investigating Raven herself, using his skills as a historical researcher to track down records from 1928. It hadn't been easy, she'd clearly covered her tracks well, but he'd eventually found a newspaper article from Chicago dated November 1928. Socialite daughter missing, presumed dead. Rachel Kharon, 23, daughter of industrialist Robert Kharon, has been missing for 1 week. Police suspect foul play. The young woman was last seen leaving the Green Mill Jazz Club in the early hours of November 3rd. The article included a photograph, a young woman with dark hair and eyes, wearing a flapper dress and pearls, staring at the camera with the same intensity Alex recognized from their cemetery meeting. Rachel Kharon. She'd been human once, with a family and a life and a future. The vampire world had changed her name slightly, Raven instead of Rachel, but kept enough that she could remember who she'd been. Alex was studying this article for the dozenth time when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tomorrow. 2 a.m. The old Millbrook factory on Riverside. Come alone. Bring the journals. R**. His heart rate spiked. This was it. Raven had found someone who could analyze Eleanor's blood, someone who might be able to recreate the cure. He texted back, I'll be there. Is it safe? The response came quickly. Nothing about this is safe. But I'll protect you. Trust me. Trust. Such a simple word. Such a complicated reality. Alex did trust Raven, he realized, despite everything that should have made that trust impossible. She'd had weeks to hurt him, to steal the journals, to take what she wanted by force. Instead, she'd been patient, careful, respectful. Human qualities in an inhuman being. The next night, Alex drove through empty streets to the abandoned factory district on the edge of town. The Millbrook factory had once been a textile mill, employing hundreds. Now it was a hollow shell, its broken windows like empty eyes staring down at the overgrown parking lot. Alex parked his car in the shadows and grabbed the backpack containing all of Eleanor's journals. He debated bringing the vial of blood too, but decided against it. If this meeting went wrong, he didn't want to lose Eleanor's most precious secret. The factory's main entrance was chained shut, but a side door stood slightly ajar. Alex pushed it open carefully, his flashlight beam cutting through the dusty darkness. Top floor, Raven's voice echoed from somewhere above. Follow the lights. Indeed, a trail of small LED lights had been placed on the floor, leading to a stairwell. Alex followed them up 3 flights of increasingly decrepit stairs, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. The top floor had been partially cleared, and what looked like a makeshift laboratory had been set up in one corner. Scientific equipment Alex didn't recognize sat on folding tables, connected to a portable generator humming quietly in the background. Raven stood near the windows, her silhouette sharp against the city lights beyond. She wasn't alone. A man stood next to her, or rather, something that had once been a man. He was tall and thin, with pale skin and silver hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. His eyes were the same unnatural dark as Raven's, but somehow colder, more clinical. Alex Carter, the man said, his voice accented, German, maybe, or Austrian. I am Dr. Victor Strauss. I've been studying vampire biology for the better part of 3 centuries. Raven tells me you carry evidence of something remarkable. Alex looked at Raven, who nodded encouragingly. Dr. Strauss is one of the few vampire scientists who believe immortality might not be permanent. He's been researching cures and reversals since long before my grandmother accomplished it. Your grandmother, Dr. Strauss said, moving closer with that same impossible grace Raven possessed, accomplished the theoretically impossible. She reversed a genetic transformation that rewrites DNA at the cellular level. I've spent decades trying to understand how it might be done. When Raven contacted me about Eleanor Blackwood, I dropped everything to come here." "Where did you come from?" Alex asked, maintaining his distance. "Vienna. I flew in yesterday. First class, naturally. We can travel by plane if we time it right, though the cabin pressure does terrible things to our sinuses." Dr. Strauss smiled, showing just a hint of elongated canines. "But enough small talk. You have journals? Documentation of the transformation and cure?" Alex hesitated, his researcher instincts warring with his caution. "Before I show you anything, I need to know, what's your interest in this? Are you trying to become human again, like Raven? Or is this just academic curiosity?" Dr. Strauss's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "An excellent question, and one that deserves an honest answer. No, I don't wish to be human again. I was turned in 1702, Mr. Carter. I've been a vampire for over 300 years. Humanity is so far behind me that I barely remember what it felt like." He moved to the window, looking out at the city. "But I believe in choice. The vampire world operates on ancient laws, rigid hierarchies, and the assumption that our transformation is permanent and irreversible. When I heard rumors of Eleanor Blackwood's cure, I began to wonder, what if we're wrong? What if immortality is a choice, not a sentence?" "You want to give other vampires the option to become human," Alex said slowly. "I want to give them the knowledge that it's possible," Dr. Strauss corrected. "What they do with that knowledge is their own choice. But yes, I believe that some vampires, perhaps many, would choose humanity if they knew the cure existed and was accessible." Raven spoke up then. "Victor is trustworthy, Alex. He's helped me before, when I was asking too many questions and making the wrong vampires nervous. He's protected younger vampires like me from the ancient ones who want to maintain their control through fear and ignorance." Alex studied Dr. Strauss carefully. The vampire scientist met his gaze without flinching, his dark eyes surprisingly kind despite their inhuman quality. "All right," Alex decided. "I'll show you what I have." He spent the next hour going through Eleanor's journals with Dr. Strauss, who read with incredible speed, his eyes moving across the pages faster than should have been possible. Occasionally he would stop, ask questions, make notes on a tablet he'd brought. Raven sat nearby, watching both of them, her expression unreadable. "Fascinating," Dr. Strauss murmured, reading Eleanor's descriptions of the cure's effects. "She describes the transformation back to humanity as more painful than the original vampiric transformation. The cellular changes happening in reverse, the genetic markers being rewritten again." He looked up at Alex. "Your grandfather was a genius. He understood something about vampire biology that I've been trying to grasp for decades. It's not mystical or supernatural, it's biological. Complex, certainly, operating on principles we don't fully understand, but ultimately biological." "Can you recreate his work?" Alex asked. "With the blood sample Raven mentioned?" "Possibly. Probably." Dr. Strauss set down the journal carefully. "But it would take time. Months of analysis, genetic sequencing, testing. And I would need subjects, vampires willing to undergo experimental treatments with no guarantee of success." "You'd have one," Raven said quietly. "Me." Dr. Strauss looked at her with something like paternal concern. "Raven, you understand the risks? Your grandmother survived, Mr. Carter, but she wrote that Dr. Carter estimated only a 60% success rate. 4 out of 10 patients would die." "I understand," Raven said. "And I'm willing to take that risk. I've been existing for 96 years, Victor. I'm ready to try living again." The conviction in her voice made Alex's chest tighten. This wasn't just academic curiosity for her. This was about reclaiming something she'd lost nearly a century ago. "Then we proceed," Dr. Strauss said decisively. "I'll need the blood sample, full access to these journals, and time to set up a proper laboratory. I can't work here. Too exposed, too temporary. I have a facility in Prague that would be perfect." "Prague," Alex repeated. "That's halfway around the world." "Which is exactly why it's safe," Dr. Strauss replied. The vampire elders who would oppose this work are primarily concentrated in North America and Western Europe. Prague is neutral territory, and I have protections in place. Raven stood and moved to Alex's side. I'll need to go with him. To be the test subject, and to help with the research. I've spent nearly a century living in this body. I understand its rhythms and needs in ways that might be useful. How long? Alex asked, though he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Months, Dr. Strauss said. At minimum. Possibly longer if we encounter complications. I'll come back, Raven said, her voice soft. When we have results, when we know if this is possible, I'll come back and tell you everything. Alex felt an unexpected surge of loss at the thought of her leaving. In just a few weeks, Raven Kharon had become important to him in ways he didn't fully understand. She was a link to his grandmother's past, yes, but she was also becoming something more. A friend, perhaps, or the beginning of something that could become friendship if given time. There's something else you should know, Alex said, making a decision. I haven't told you everything my grandmother wrote about the cure. He pulled out a small notebook, his own, not Eleanor's. I made copies of certain passages, things I thought were important. My grandmother wrote that the cure didn't just make her human again, it changed her in other ways. She said she could still sense vampires, feel their presence nearby. And she wrote that vampires seemed to sense something in her too, even after the cure. A resonance, Dr. Strauss said thoughtfully. Her cells remembered what they had been. Interesting. But she also wrote this. Alex opened the notebook to a specific page. It's from about 10 years after the cure. She was describing a chance encounter with a vampire she'd known before her transformation. He read aloud, Marcus didn't recognize me at first. Why would he? To him, I'd been dead for decades. But when I said my name, when he looked into my eyes, he knew. And the strangest thing happened. He felt human to me. Not in the physical sense. I could still tell he was vampire. But in some deeper way, I recognized the person he'd been before the transformation. The cure hadn't just made me human. It had given me the ability to see the humanity that remained in vampires, buried beneath centuries of predatory instinct. Raven and Dr. Strauss were both staring at him. She could see our humanity, Raven whispered, even after we'd forgotten it ourselves. According to her journals, yes. She said it was both a gift and a curse. Seeing the person inside the monster made it harder to fear vampires, but also harder to hate them. Alex looked at Raven. I think that's why she knew you were coming. Why she left all of this for me. She saw something in the patterns, in the way vampires were circling closer to our family. She sensed you, Raven, and she wanted me to be able to see what she saw. And what do you see? Raven asked quietly. Alex met her dark eyes steadily. I see someone who's been asking the same questions for 96 years. Someone brave enough to admit she doesn't have all the answers. Someone who deserves a chance to choose her own fate. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Dr. Strauss cleared his throat diplomatically. This is valuable information, Mr. Carter. If the cure creates a perceptual bridge between the human and vampire states, it could help us understand the transformation on a deeper level. He began packing up his equipment. We should leave soon. Dawn is in 3 hours, and we need to be well away from here before then. Reality crashed back in. Raven would be leaving, possibly for months, to undergo an experimental treatment that might kill her or transform her back into the human she'd been in 1928. Wait, Alex said. Before you go, I need to know, what was your name? Your human name, before you became Raven. She smiled sadly. Rachel. Rachel Kharon, daughter of Robert and Margaret, sister to Thomas and little Sarah. I was 23 years old, and I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to see the world, experience everything, live 1,000 lives through my words. You got your wish, Alex said. You've lived for nearly a century. But I haven't written a single word, Raven replied. Because immortality gives you all the time in the world, which means there's never any urgency to actually do anything. That's the lie of eternal life, Alex. It promises infinite possibility but delivers infinite procrastination. She moved closer, and before Alex realized what was happening, she took his hand. Her skin was cool but not cold, smooth but somehow electric. "Thank you," she said simply, "for trusting me, for seeing me as more than a monster, for giving me hope that I might get a second chance." "Come back," Alex said. "When this is over, whatever happens, come back and tell me your story. All of it. Rachel and Raven, human and vampire, the whole truth." "I will. I promise." And then she was stepping away, helping Dr. Strauss load equipment into cases, preparing for a journey that would take her halfway around the world in search of her lost humanity. Alex watched them work, memorizing every detail. The way Raven moved with inhuman grace but human purpose, the care with which she handled Eleanor's journals, the determined set of her jaw that spoke of hope and fear combined. Just before they left, Raven turned back one last time. "Alex, in my human life, I had a favorite poem. Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. I used to think it was about adventure, about choosing the exciting path. But now I understand it's about choice itself, about taking responsibility for where your decisions lead you. And that has made all the difference." Alex quoted the final line. "Yes," Raven agreed. "That has made all the difference." Then she and Dr. Strauss disappeared into the night, leaving Alex alone in the abandoned factory with empty equipment cases and the weight of his grandmother's legacy. He stood there for a long time, looking out at the city waking up to dawn, thinking about choices and consequences, about monsters and humans, about the thin line that separated one from the other. His grandmother had chosen to become human again, accepting mortality in exchange for authenticity. Raven was choosing to try for that same transformation, risking death to reclaim life. And Alex had chosen to help her, tying his fate to hers in ways he didn't yet fully understand. The story Eleanor had begun decades ago was still being written. And now Alex and Raven were writing the next chapter together, separated by an ocean but connected by blood and choice and the fragile hope that redemption was possible. Even for monsters. Especially for monsters. 4 months passed with agonizing slowness. Alex threw himself into his work at the museum, curating a new exhibition on Victorian medical practices that would have made his grandmother smile. But every quiet moment, every empty evening, his thoughts drifted to Prague, to a laboratory somewhere in that ancient city where Raven was undergoing tests and treatments that might save or destroy her. She sent messages occasionally, brief texts that revealed little but meant everything. Week 3. Victor is brilliant. Also incredibly German about his schedules. I've given more blood samples than I thought possible for someone who's technically dead. Week 7. The genetic analysis is fascinating. Victor says my DNA looks like it's been arguing with itself for 96 years. I told him that sounds about right. Week 11. Had a bad reaction to the first treatment trial. Spent 2 days feeling like my cells were on fire. Victor says this is promising. His definition of promising is terrifying. Week 16. I remembered something today. The taste of strawberry ice cream. Not the memory of the taste, the actual sensation, like my human taste buds woke up for a moment before going dormant again. Is this what hope feels like? Alex treasured each message, reading them dozens of times, trying to decode everything Raven wasn't saying between the lines. The fear. The pain. The desperate hope that this might actually work. He was reviewing her latest message, Week 18. Victor says we're ready for the real attempt. Tomorrow. I'm terrified and excited and I wish you were here. When his office door burst open without a knock. A woman stood in the doorway, and Alex's instincts screamed danger before his conscious mind could process why. She was beautiful in an unsettling way. Perfect features that seemed almost carved rather than born, eyes that reflected light like a cat's, and an aura of barely contained violence that made the air around her feel heavier. She was vampire, and she was old. Much older than Raven. Alex could feel it in his bones, that sense Eleanor had written about, the ability to recognize not just what someone was, but how long they'd been it. Alex Carter, the woman said, her voice like silk over steel. How convenient. I've been looking for you. Alex's hand moved toward his phone, but the woman crossed the room in a blink, her hand gripping his wrist with inhuman strength. Not enough to hurt, but enough to make escape impossible. "Let's not be dramatic," she said, releasing him and stepping back. "I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to make you an offer." She sat elegantly in the chair across from his desk, crossing her legs as if settling in for a pleasant chat. "My name is Cassandra Voss. I am, among other things, a member of the Council of Elders, the governing body of vampire society in the Western Hemisphere." Alex's blood ran cold. The Council. Eleanor had written about them in her journals, ancient vampires who enforced the old laws, who saw humanity as food and other vampires as property to be controlled. "I don't have anything to say to you," Alex said, keeping his voice steady through sheer force of will. "But I have much to say to you." Cassandra smiled, showing no fong, a deliberate choice, Alex realized. A predator pretending to be harmless. "We know about your grandmother's cure. We've known for years, actually. We chose not to interfere while she lived because, well, she was one of us once. Professional courtesy. She stopped being one of you the day she chose humanity." "Did she?" Cassandra tilted her head. "Or did she simply find a way to hide what she really was?" "You've read her journals, Alex. You know she could still sense us, still see the world with vampire perception even after the cure. She wasn't human. She was something between. Something new." "What do you want?" "The same thing your little friend Raven wants. The cure. But for very different purposes." Cassandra leaned forward. "Raven is naive. She thinks becoming human again will solve her existential crisis, will make her feel whole and real. She doesn't understand that the cure won't erase 96 years of memories. She'll still carry the weight of everyone she killed, everything she did. Human or vampire, guilt is guilt. That's her choice to make." "Is it?" "Because her choice affects all of us. If the cure becomes public knowledge, if vampires start believing they can return to humanity, our entire society collapses. We survive through secrecy, through control, through the understanding that transformation is permanent. The cure threatens that." Alex's mind raced. "So you want to destroy it? The research, the formula, everything." "Not destroy," Cassandra corrected. "Control. The Council believes the cure should exist, but only under our supervision. Vampires who want to become human would need to petition the Council, prove they're worthy of the treatment, and accept certain conditions." "Conditions like what?" "Memory modification. We can't have ex-vampires walking around with a century of knowledge about our world, our weaknesses, our hiding places. They would need to forget their vampire years entirely, become human with no memory of what they were." The horror of it hit Alex like a physical blow. "You want to erase who they are." "We want to protect who we are," Cassandra replied. "The cure without oversight is a weapon. In our hands, it becomes a tool, a way to manage the population, reward loyalty, punish troublemakers by returning them to the fragility of mortality. Raven would never agree to that. She wants to remember. The memories are part of what makes her who she is. Raven won't have a choice." Cassandra stood, moving to the window. "Dr. Strauss thinks his laboratory in Prague is secure. It's not. We've known about it for weeks. We've been waiting for the right moment to intervene, and that moment is now. Tomorrow, when they attempt the cure on your rebellious little friend, the Council will be there to take custody of the research." Alex stood so quickly his chair fell backward. "You can't." "We can and we will. But here's where you come in." Cassandra turned back to him, her expression almost kind. "We need the original vial of your grandmother's blood. The pre-cure sample. Dr. Strauss has been working from genetic data and journal descriptions, but the actual blood would accelerate the research by months, maybe years. I'll never give it to you. Then Raven dies tomorrow. We'll interrupt the procedure at a critical moment, when her body is halfway between vampire and human. She'll experience a cascade failure, every organ shutting down at once while she's conscious and aware. It takes approximately 40 minutes. I'm told it's excruciating." The casual cruelty of it made Alex's stomach turn. You'd murder her just to get the blood sample? I'd eliminate a rebellious vampire who threatens our social order, yes. And then I'd take the sample from you anyway. Cassandra moved closer. But it doesn't have to go that way. Give me the blood willingly, and I'll ensure Raven survives the procedure. She'll become human again, just as she wishes. The Council will even let her keep some of her memories, the personal ones, though not the dangerous knowledge about our world. And Dr. Strauss? He'll continue his research, under Council supervision. He's too valuable to eliminate, though he'll need to be incentivized to cooperate. Alex's mind raced through options, scenarios, possibilities. He could refuse, but Cassandra would take the vial by force and Raven would die. He could agree, but Raven would lose most of who she was, and the cure would become a weapon in the hands of vampire elders who saw humans as cattle. Or he could stall, could buy time to warn Raven and Dr. Strauss somehow. I need time to think, he said. You have 10 seconds before I lose patience. 24 hours. If I'm going to betray my grandmother's trust, I need time to process it. Cassandra studied him with those ancient, inhuman eyes. You're planning something. Trying to warn them, perhaps? It won't work. We're monitoring all of Dr. Strauss's communications. We have agents watching his laboratory. The moment you try to contact them, we'll know. Then you have nothing to lose by giving me 24 hours. A long pause. Then Cassandra smiled. Very well. 24 hours. Meet me here tomorrow at this time with the vial, and Raven lives. Fail to appear, and she dies screaming. She moved toward the door with that impossible speed. Oh, and Alex? Don't try to run. Don't try to hide. We've been tracking bloodlines for centuries. There's nowhere you can go that we can't find you. And then she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of expensive perfume and the cold certainty that Alex had just been backed into an impossible corner. He stood frozen for a long moment, his mind spinning. Then he grabbed his phone and started typing a message to Raven, and stopped. If they were monitoring communications, anything he sent would be intercepted. But Eleanor had been paranoid too, had spent decades hiding from vampires who might want her secrets. She'd left him more than just journals and blood samples. She'd left him contingencies. Alex rushed home, taking a deliberately indirect route to his apartment, checking constantly for signs he was being followed. Once inside, he went straight to the small safe hidden behind a false panel in his closet, another paranoid gift from Eleanor. Inside was a burner phone, never activated, with a single number programmed into it. A note in Eleanor's handwriting, *for emergencies. This line goes to James's old research partner, Dr. Sarah Chen. She knows everything, and she survived this long by staying completely off vampire radar. Trust her. Alex activated the phone with shaking hands and dialed. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered. Who is this? My name is Alex Carter. Eleanor Blackwood was my grandmother. A sharp intake of breath. Is she? She died 4 months ago. Peacefully. But her legacy is in danger, and I need help. Tell me everything. Alex spent 20 minutes explaining. Raven, Dr. Strauss, the cure research, and now Cassandra Voss and the Council's ultimatum. Dr. Chen listened without interruption, and when he finished, she was silent for a long moment. The Council has been searching for the cure for decades, she finally said. They've suppressed every attempt to research vampire biology independently. Victor Strauss has been a thorn in their side for years, but they've tolerated him because his work was theoretical. Now that it's becoming practical, they'll stop him by any means necessary. Can you help? Is there a way to warn Raven and Dr. Strauss without the Council knowing? Maybe. I have contacts in Prague, researchers who operate outside vampire control. I can get a message to Victor through channels the Council doesn't monitor. But Alex, you need to understand, if you do this, if you defy the Council, they'll come after you. They'll come after everyone connected to this research. Your life as you know it is over. Alex thought about Raven's messages, about her hope and fear, about the courage it took to voluntarily undergo a treatment that might kill her. He thought about his grandmother spending 40 years as a human, grateful every day for the choice she'd made. "Do it," he said. "Warn them. And tell Dr. Strauss he needs to accelerate the timeline. They have to attempt the cure tonight, before the council can interfere. And the vial? Cassandra will kill you when you don't show up with it tomorrow." "Then I won't be here tomorrow. I'll be on a plane to Prague." "Alex. My grandmother left me this legacy for a reason, Dr. Chen. She knew this moment would come. She knew I'd have to choose between safety and truth." He felt oddly calm now, as if making the decision had settled something deep inside him. "I choose truth. I choose Raven. And I choose to finish what my grandmother started." Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then, "Eleanor would be proud of you. I'll make the calls. Get to the airport. I'll arrange a ticket under a false name and send you the details. And Alex, pack light. You won't be coming back for a while." The line went dead. Alex stood in his apartment, looking around at the life he'd built, the books, the research materials, the comfortable routine of museum work and historical investigation. All of it about to become memory. He packed a single bag with essentials, grabbed Eleanor's journals and the vial of blood, and wrote a quick resignation letter to the museum. By the time the sun set, he was at the airport with a ticket to Prague under the name Michael Blackwood, his grandmother's surname, a small homage to the woman who had set all of this in motion. As the plane lifted off, Alex looked out at the city lights falling away beneath him and thought about choices, about legacies, about the price of doing what's right instead of what's safe. He thought about Raven, somewhere in Prague, preparing for a transformation that might kill her or save her or turn her into something entirely new. And he thought about his grandmother's words, asterisk when you meet her, you'll have a choice to make. Choose wisely, asterisk. He had made his choice. Now he just had to survive it. Prague at night was a city of shadows and gold light, ancient bridges spanning dark water, Gothic spires reaching toward a clouded sky. Alex barely saw any of it. He went straight from the airport to the address Dr. Chan had texted him, a nondescript building in the industrial district, its exterior deliberately shabby to discourage curiosity. The door was reinforced steel despite its weathered appearance. Alex knocked 3 times, paused, knocked twice more, the pattern Dr. Chen had specified. Dr. Strauss opened the door immediately. Thank God. Dr. Chen's message was cryptic, but the urgency was clear. The council is moving against us. They're planning to raid this facility tomorrow during the procedure. Alex stepped inside, and the contrast with the exterior was startling. The building's interior had been converted into a state-of-the-art research facility, with equipment that looked like it belonged in a major university laboratory. "Tomorrow is too late," Dr. Strauss said, leading him deeper into the facility. "We're doing it now. Tonight. Raven's already prepped. Is she ready? Is anyone ready for this?" Dr. Strauss's expression was grim. "We've run every test, every simulation. The formula is as refined as I can make it based on your grandmother's journals. But Alex, you need to understand, this is still experimental. The success rate is unknown. Raven could die, or worse, be trapped in a state between human and vampire. Worse than death. Much worse. Imagine being conscious but unable to move, feeling hunger for both blood and food but unable to satisfy either, your body literally at war with itself at the cellular level." Dr. Strauss stopped at a heavy door. "But Raven knows the risks. She's insisted on proceeding despite my warnings." He opened the door to reveal what looked like a medical operating theater, except the equipment was far more sophisticated than anything Alex had seen in hospitals. Monitoring screens, devices he couldn't name, and in the center, a surgical chair surrounded by 4 stands and machines. Raven sat in the chair, already connected to multiple lines. She wore a simple white hospital gown, and her dark hair was pulled back. She looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable, though her eyes were still bright with that familiar intensity. "Alex." Her face lit up when she saw him. "You're here. How?" "Long story. We have a bigger problem." He quickly explained about Cassandra Voss, the council's ultimatum, and their plan to seize control of the cure research. Raven's expression darkened. The Council. Of course. They can't let vampires have free will. Can't risk losing control of their perfect little eternal hierarchy. Which is why we're doing this now, Dr. Strauss said. Before they can interfere. Alex, you need to understand what's about to happen. The cure works in stages. First, I'll inject Raven with a serum derived from your grandmother's blood work, a genetic modifier that will tell her cells to begin rewriting themselves. He moved to a table where a large syringe filled with silvery liquid sat waiting. Stage 2 begins approximately 10 minutes later. Her vampire DNA will start breaking down, and her original human DNA will begin reasserting itself. This is when the pain starts. How bad? Alex asked. Based on your grandmother's journals? Imagine every cell in your body dying and being reborn simultaneously while you're conscious. Eleanor described it as being burned alive from the inside. Raven's voice was steady despite the fear Alex could see in her eyes. How long does it last? 40 to 90 minutes for the cellular transformation. Then several hours of stabilization. If you survive the initial transformation, you should survive the rest. Dr. Strauss's clinical tone didn't quite hide his concern. But Raven, I need you to understand, once I inject you, there's no going back. If your body rejects the treatment, I can't reverse it. You'll either become human or you'll die. I understand. Raven looked at Alex. If this goes wrong, if I don't make it, I need you to do something for me. Don't talk like that. Alex, please. Listen. She reached out, and he took her cool hand. If I die, find my family. My human family. They think I died in 1928, that I was murdered or kidnapped, and they never got closure. Tell them I found peace. That I wasn't suffering. That Raven Kharon lived a long life, even if it wasn't the one they expected. You're not going to die. But if I do, then I'll tell them, Alex promised. But you're going to survive this, Raven. You're going to become Rachel again. And you're going to write all those stories you never wrote, live all those experiences you postponed for 96 years. She smiled, tears glistening in those dark eyes. You believe in me. I believe in you, Alex confirmed. And I believe in the choice you're making. Dr. Strauss cleared his throat gently. We need to begin. The council could arrive early, and we can't let them interrupt the procedure once it starts. Raven squeezed Alex's hand once more, then released it. I'm ready. Dr. Strauss administered the injection with practiced precision, the silvery liquid disappearing into Raven's vein. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Raven gasped, her eyes going wide. It's starting, she whispered. I can feel it. Like ice spreading through my bloodstream, but not cold. Something else. Something that burns without heat. Alex moved to a chair beside her, taking her hand again. Dr. Strauss monitored the screens intently, calling out readings, heart rate increasing. Unusual for a vampire, her heart shouldn't be beating at all yet. Cellular activity spiking across all systems. The transformation has begun. The next hour was the longest of Alex's life. He watched Raven's face contort with pain she was clearly trying to hide, felt her grip on his hand become painfully tight as waves of agony rolled through her. She didn't scream, a matter of pride perhaps, or maybe vampires had learned centuries ago that screaming accomplished nothing, but her breathing became ragged, desperate. Talk to me, she gasped during a brief lull. Tell me something. Anything. I need to focus on something other than this. What do you want to hear? Tell me about Eleanor. After the cure. What was her life like? Alex thought about the later journals, the ones filled with simple human joys. She said every sunset felt like a gift. She'd go outside every evening just before dusk and watch the sun go down, something she couldn't do for 90 years. She said it never got old, never became routine. Every sunset was a miracle. Raven's grip tightened as another wave of pain hit. When she could speak again, her voice was strained. What else? She learned to cook. Terrible at first, she'd forgotten everything about food preparation. She burned water once, she wrote. My grandfather thought it was hilarious. But she got better. Eventually became pretty good. She said tasting the food she'd made herself was one of the purest joys of humanity. Food, Raven whispered. I remember food. Strawberries. My mother used to make strawberry shortcake every June. I can almost taste it. Dr. Strauss's voice cut in, urgent, critical point approaching. Heart rate is 180 and climbing. Her human cardiovascular system is trying to restart while her vampire physiology resists. This is where your grandmother almost died, Alex. The next 5 minutes will determine everything. Alex leaned closer to Raven, his voice steady despite his fear. Stay with me, Raven. Rachel. Stay here. You're not done yet. You haven't written your stories. Haven't tasted strawberry shortcake. Haven't seen a sunset with human eyes. Raven's eyes opened, focusing on him with effort. Alex, if I die, tell Victor to destroy the research. Don't let the council have it. Promise me. You're not going to die. Promise. I promise, he said, tears streaming down his face. But you're not going to die because you're stronger than this. You survived 96 years as a vampire. You can survive 40 minutes becoming human again. Her back arched suddenly, her entire body going rigid. The monitors screamed with alarms. Dr. Strauss moved quickly, injecting something else into her foreline. Stabilizer, he explained tersely. Her system is rejecting the transformation. I'm giving her the maximum safe dose of... A sound interrupted him, loud, authoritative pounding on the facility's outer door. Council enforcement, a voice called from outside. Open this door or we break it down. Dr. Strauss swore in German. They're early. The procedure isn't complete. If they interrupt now, she'll die for certain. How much longer? Alex demanded. 5 minutes. Maybe 10. Her vital signs are stabilizing, but she's not through the crisis yet. The pounding intensified. Alex heard something else, the sound of cutting equipment beginning to work on the reinforced door. They're breaching, Dr. Strauss said. We have maybe 3 minutes before they're inside. Alex looked at Raven, writhing in pain on the surgical chair, so close to the humanity she'd been seeking. Then he looked at the door, at the tools and equipment scattered around the laboratory. He thought about his grandmother, who had survived 90 years as a vampire and 40 as a human, who had been willing to risk everything for authenticity, who had left him this legacy knowing he might have to fight for it. Keep working, Alex said, standing up. Save her. I'll buy you time. Alex, you can't. I can and I will. He moved toward the door, grabbing a heavy metal pipe from a workbench. My grandmother didn't survive 177 years just so the council could turn her gift into a weapon. And Raven didn't endure 96 years of questioning just to die before getting her answer. The door was beginning to buckle under the assault. Alex could see flashlights through the widening gap, hear multiple voices coordinating the breach. He thought about Eleanor's final journal entry, the one he'd read but not shared with anyone. *I lived 2 lives, Alex. One as a monster who forgot her humanity, and one as a human who remembered being a monster. Neither was complete without the other. When your time comes to choose, and it will come, remember that the strongest people are those who've lived in both worlds and found a way to honor both. The door exploded inward. 3 figures entered, vampires all, moving with that impossible speed. The lead one was Cassandra Voss, her beautiful face twisted with cold fury. You foolish, foolish boy, she said. You've just signed your death warrant. Maybe, Alex replied, gripping the pipe tighter. But I've also bought enough time for Raven to complete her transformation. So I'd say it's worth it. Behind him, he heard Raven scream, not in pain this time, but in triumph. In life. In the pure, overwhelming joy of a heart that had been silent for 96 years finally beating with human rhythm. The transformation was complete. Raven Kharon was human again. And Alex Carter, standing between the council's enforcers and the miracle they wanted to control, knew that whatever happened next, he had made the right choice. Just like his grandmother before him. Just like Raven herself. The choice that makes all the difference. The scream that tore from Raven's throat was unlike anything Alex had ever heard. Raw, primal, born from a place deeper than pain. It was the sound of death and birth happening simultaneously, of a soul reclaiming a body that had been stolen from it 96 years ago. Cassandra Voss froze mid-step, her expression shifting from fury to something closer to awe. Behind her, the two council enforcers stopped their advance, all three vampires staring at the woman on the surgical chair. Raven's eyes had changed. They were no longer the endless black of vampire eyes, but brown, warm, human brown with flecks of gold that caught the laboratory lights. Her skin, which had been pale and smooth as marble, now showed color, flushed pink with the rush of blood through newly active vessels. And most tellingly, her chest rose and fell with desperate, gasping breaths. She was breathing. She was alive. "Impossible," Cassandra whispered. "It actually worked." Dr. Strauss was at Raven's side immediately, checking monitors, examining readings with shaking hands. Heart rate stabilizing at 95 beats per minute. Blood pressure 130/85. Oxygen saturation rising. Body temperature 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. He looked up, and there were tears on his face. She's human. Completely, genuinely human. Raven's hand reached up weakly, touching her own chest, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "I can feel it," she gasped. "My heart. It's beating. It's actually beating." She started to cry, real tears, not the dry mockery of vampire tears, but salt water streaming down her flushed cheeks. "I can feel everything. The air moving in my lungs. The blood in my veins. I'm alive. I'm actually alive." Alex wanted to go to her, but Cassandra's attention had shifted back to him, and her expression had hardened again. "You interfered with council business," she said coldly. "You helped a rogue vampire escape our control. The penalty for that is death." "The penalty," a new voice said from behind the council vampires, "is whatever I decide it is." Everyone turned. An elderly man stood in the doorway, or rather, something that looked like an elderly man. He was small, dressed in an impeccable three-piece suit, with white hair and wire-rimmed glasses. But his eyes were ancient, and the power radiating from him made even Cassandra Voss take a step back. "Elder Marcus," she said, and for the first time, there was fear in her voice. "I didn't know you were coming personally." "Clearly." The old man, Elder Marcus, stepped into the laboratory, his movements measured and deliberate. "Otherwise you might have shown more restraint, Cassandra. Threatening humans, breaking down doors, attempting to interrupt a medical procedure. Not the council's finest hour." He approached the surgical chair, studying Raven with clinical interest. "Rachel Kharon. Or should I say, the vampire formerly known as Rachel Kharon. How do you feel?" "Like I've been turned inside out," Raven managed, her voice hoarse. "But also, free. For the first time in 96 years, I feel free." Elder Marcus nodded slowly. "I knew your creator. Violent, impulsive creature. He turned you without permission, without proper vetting. The council would have destroyed him for it, but he disappeared before we could act." He paused. "You were a victim, Miss Kharon. You didn't choose to become vampire. In my view, choosing to become human again is simply correcting an injustice." Cassandra's shock was visible. "Elder Marcus, surely you're not suggesting we allow this? The cure is a threat to our entire society." "The cure is a choice," Elder Marcus interrupted. "And choice, Cassandra, is the foundation of true power. We don't control our people through fear and force alone. We control them because they believe there's no alternative. But what if there is? What if vampirism isn't a permanent sentence, but a state that can be chosen or unchosen?" He turned to Dr. Strauss. "You've done remarkable work here, Doctor. Work that frightens many of my colleagues, which is precisely why it's valuable. The Council has been stagnant for centuries, operating on assumptions that may no longer serve us. You want the cure for yourself, Alex said, suddenly understanding. Elder Marcus smiled. Perceptive. Yes, Mr. Carter. I've been a vampire for over 800 years. I've seen empires rise and fall, watched humanity evolve from feudal peasants to spacefaring beings. And I've grown tired, not of existence, but of this particular form of existence. He gestured to himself. I was turned against my will in 1244. I've had centuries to consider whether I would make the same choice today. The answer, increasingly, is no. You can't be serious, Cassandra said. You're one of the council elders. If you take the cure, if you become human, then I'll die within a few decades, and someone younger and perhaps wiser will take my place. As it should be. Elder Marcus moved closer to Dr. Strauss. I want to commission your research, Doctor. Full funding, complete protection, and access to every vampire who might volunteer as a test subject. In exchange, you'll work to refine the cure, make it safer, more reliable. And the council? Dr. Strauss asked warily. Will be persuaded. By me, if necessary. Elder Marcus's smile was cold. I may be old, but I'm still the eldest. And I've been accumulating favors and leverage for 8 centuries. Cassandra will not interfere, nor will any other council member. Will you, Cassandra? It wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in politeness. Cassandra's jaw clenched. No, Elder Marcus. I will not interfere. Excellent. Elder Marcus turned back to Raven. Miss Kharon, you're about to become famous in our world, the first vampire in modern times to successfully reverse the transformation. You'll be studied, questioned, perhaps even celebrated. How does that make you feel? Raven tried to sit up, and Alex rushed to help her, supporting her weight as she adjusted to the weakness of human muscles. I feel, she said slowly, like I want to eat real food, see a real sunset, and sleep in a real bed for about 24 hours. After that, you can study me all you want. Elder Marcus laughed, a genuine, warm sound. Fair enough. Dr. Strauss, I trust you'll monitor her recovery? I want detailed documentation of the first 72 hours post-transformation. Of course, Elder. And Mr. Carter. Elder Marcus fixed Alex with those ancient eyes. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. Eleanor Blackwood, or should I say Eleanor Carter, lived 2 complete lives and found peace in both. That's a rare gift. She left you quite a legacy. I'm beginning to understand that, Alex said. Are you? Because from where I stand, you've just positioned yourself at the center of vampire politics, made an enemy of the Council's security forces, and tied your fate to a newly human vampire who's going to need considerable protection while she adjusts to mortality. Elder Marcus's expression was unreadable. That's not a legacy, Mr. Carter. That's a revolution. I just wanted to help Raven. And in doing so, you've given hope to every vampire who's ever questioned their transformation. Every creature who's wondered if they made a mistake. Every immortal who's tired of forever. Elder Marcus moved toward the door. The consequences of that will ripple through our world for decades. I hope you're ready. He paused at the threshold. Cassandra, have your people repair the door they destroyed. And compensate Dr. Strauss for any damaged equipment. We're not barbarians, after all. Then he was gone, moving with that impossible speed, leaving behind a laboratory full of people trying to process what had just happened. Cassandra glared at Alex with barely contained fury. You got lucky. Elder Marcus's protection won't last forever, and when it ends, we'll be having a very different conversation. Is that a threat? It's a promise. She turned to her enforcers. Come. We have work to do. They departed, and suddenly the laboratory felt much larger, much quieter. Dr. Strauss let out a breath he'd been holding. Well, that was unexpected. Which part? Alex asked. The part where the cure worked, or the part where an 800-year-old vampire decided to fund the research? All of it, Dr. Strauss admitted. He turned to Raven, who was touching her face with trembling hands, exploring the warmth of her own skin. "How do you feel?" "Truly overwhelmed," Raven whispered. "Everything is so intense. I can smell things I haven't smelled in nearly a century. The disinfectant, the metal, even the fabric of this gown against my skin, it all feels new and strange and wonderful." She looked up at Alex, and her eyes, her human, brown, beautiful eyes, were bright with tears and joy. "Thank you for believing in me, for coming here, for buying me those last few minutes." "I told you you'd survive," Alex said softly. "You did. And I didn't believe you. But you were right." She reached for his hand, and her skin was warm now, alive with circulating blood. "What happens now?" "Now," Dr. Strauss said gently, "you rest. Your body has just undergone the most traumatic transformation possible. You need food, water, sleep, and time to adjust. We'll monitor you constantly for the next week to ensure there are no complications." "And after that?" "After that," Alex said, "you live, Rachel. You write those stories you never wrote. You eat strawberry shortcake. You watch sunsets. You do all the things you postponed for 96 years. "Rachel," she repeated softly. "I haven't been called that in so long. It sounds strange. Foreign." "You'll get used to it again," Alex assured her. "Will I?" She looked down at her hands, flexing fingers that moved with human slowness now, without the supernatural grace of vampirism. 96 years of memories don't disappear just because the DNA changes. "I remember everything I did as a vampire. Everyone I hurt. All the lives I took." "Your grandmother wrote about that," Dr. Strauss said quietly. "The guilt that came after the cure. She said it was the hardest part, being human enough to feel remorse for things she'd done when she wasn't human. But she also wrote that the guilt was proof the cure worked. That she'd reclaimed her conscience along with her humanity." Rachel, Alex found himself thinking of her by her human name now, nodded slowly. "I need to make amends. Somehow. I don't know how you apologize for 96 years of being a monster, but I need to try." "One day at a time," Alex said. "That's how my grandmother did it. She couldn't undo the past, but she could choose how to live in the present." Rachel squeezed his hand. "Stay with me, while I figure out how to be human again. I know it's asking a lot, but—" "I'm not going anywhere," Alex interrupted. "We're in this together now. You, me, and my grandmother's legacy." Dr. Strauss cleared his throat diplomatically. "I should mention, the recovery process will take weeks, possibly months. Rachel will need support, monitoring, and help adjusting to human limitations. Mr. Carter, are you prepared for that commitment?" Alex looked at Rachel, at the hope and fear and determination in her newly human eyes, and thought about his grandmother's final words. About choices and consequences. About monsters and humans and the thin line between them. "Yes," he said simply. "I'm prepared." 6 weeks later, Alex and Rachel stood on the Charles Bridge in Prague, watching the sun rise over the Vltava River. It was Rachel's first sunrise as a human. Dr. Strauss had insisted she wait until her transformation stabilized completely before exposing herself to direct sunlight, just to be safe. Rachel had her face tilted up to the growing light, her eyes closed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's warm," she whispered. "The sun is warm on my face, and it doesn't burn. It doesn't hurt. It's just beautiful." Alex stood beside her, watching her experience this moment he'd taken for granted his entire life. In the week since the cure, he'd watched Rachel relearn 100 small things. How to sleep, she'd forgotten the exact sensation of drifting off. How to eat without feeling nauseous, her digestive system had needed time to reactivate. How to walk without supernatural grace, she'd tripped over her own feet more than once. But he'd also watched her discover joy in the smallest things. The taste of coffee. The feeling of genuine exhaustion after a long day. The ache of muscles after exercise. All the small discomforts and pleasures of being mortal. "Tell me what you're thinking," Alex said softly. Rachel opened her eyes, squinting slightly in the bright morning light. "I'm thinking about time. As a vampire, Time felt infinite. Endless. There was always tomorrow, always next week, always next decade. But now. She looked at her hands, noting the small callus forming from holding a pen. She'd started writing again, filling journal after journal with stories and memories. Now every moment matters because there won't be infinite moments. And that makes everything more precious. My grandmother wrote almost the exact same thing. Did she? I'd like to read more of her later journals, if you don't mind sharing them. The ones from after the cure, when she was adjusting to humanity. They're yours to read whenever you want. Alex paused. Actually, I've been meaning to ask you something. What? What do you want to do now? Long term, I mean. Dr. Strauss says your transformation is complete. You're stable. You could go anywhere, do anything. What do you want? Rachel was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun climb higher over Prague's ancient skyline. I want to go home. To America. To Chicago, specifically. Your family. They're all gone now. I checked. My parents died in the 1950s, my siblings in the 70s and 80s. But my niece is still alive, my sister Sarah's daughter. She's in her 80s now, living in a nursing home. Rachel's voice was thick with emotion. I want to meet her. As her long-lost great-aunt Rachel, miraculously found after a century. I want to tell her that her grandmother spoke of her often, that the family didn't forget about me even after I disappeared. That's going to be complicated to explain. I know. But Dr. Chen, your grandmother's research partner, she's helped me create a cover story. I was supposedly kidnapped in 1928, held captive for years, eventually escaped but had amnesia. It's not perfect, but it's believable enough. Rachel turned to face Alex. Will you come with me? To Chicago. You want me there. I want you everywhere, Rachel said, then blushed, a human blush, blood rushing to her cheeks in a way that was impossible when she'd been vampire. I mean, these past 6 weeks, you've been my anchor. My connection to humanity when I wasn't sure I could do this. I don't think I could have survived the adjustment without you. Alex felt his own heart rate increase. Over the past weeks, his feelings for Rachel had evolved from protective concern to something deeper, something he'd been afraid to name. I care about you, Rachel. Not just as Eleanor's legacy, not just as a research project. As you. As the person you are now and the person you're becoming. Even though I spent 96 years as a monster, you weren't a monster. You were a vampire. There's a difference. And now you're human, making the choice to live with your past instead of running from it. He took her hand, noting how warm it was now, how alive. That takes more courage than most people have. Rachel leaned forward and kissed him, a gentle, tentative kiss that spoke of new beginnings and second chances. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Your grandmother would approve, I think. She wrote about finding love after the cure, about how much more meaningful it felt when you knew your time together was finite. She'd definitely approve. She left me explicit instructions in her final journal. When you meet her, choose love over fear. Choose connection over safety. Choose to live fully, even knowing it will end. Wise woman. The wisest. Alex looked out at the river, at the city waking up around them. So Chicago, then. We'll meet your niece, help you reconnect with whatever family remains. And after that, I write. I finally write all the stories I've been carrying around for a century. And maybe. She hesitated. Maybe I help other vampires who want what I have. Dr. Strauss's research is continuing, funded by Elder Marcus. There will be others seeking the cure. Others who need someone to talk to who's been through it. You want to be a guide. I want to give back. To help undo some of the damage I caused. Rachel's expression was serious. I can't bring back the people I killed, Alex. I can't undo 96 years of being a predator. But I can help other vampires choose humanity if they want it. That has to mean something. It means everything, Alex assured her. They stood together as the sun continued to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Around them, Prague was coming alive. People crossing the bridge on their way to work, street vendors setting up their stalls, the city breathing with human rhythm. "Alex," Rachel said softly. "Yes. Thank you for seeing me. Not the vampire I was or even the human I'm becoming, but the person in between. The one trying to figure out who she is now." "That's who I fell for," Alex admitted. "The person asking questions. The one brave enough to change." Rachel squeezed his hand, and they stood together watching the sunrise. Two people connected by legacy and choice, by past and future, by the complex space between monster and human where real life happens. 1 year later. The dedication ceremony for the Eleanor Carter Memorial Research Institute was held on a perfect autumn afternoon. The facility, funded by Elder Marcus and operated by Dr. Strauss, occupied a renovated building in Chicago, its mission statement carved above the entrance. Asterisk, for those seeking the courage to choose who they become. Asterisk. Alex stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd. Humans and vampires together. The first time he'd seen both species gathered openly in the same space. Dr. Strauss sat in the front row next to Elder Marcus, who had indeed taken the cure 6 months earlier and was now living as a mortal 75-year-old, writing his memoirs and apparently enjoying retirement. Raven Kharon, author of the recently published Between Worlds, A Vampire's Return to Humanity, sat next to her elderly niece Margaret, who had cried for an hour when Rachel first appeared at her nursing home with stories of her mother Sarah and proof of their shared family connection. "My grandmother, Eleanor Carter, lived 2 lives, Alex began, his voice steady despite his nerves. 90 years as a vampire, 40 as a human. She could have chosen to hide what she'd been, to pretend the vampire years never happened. Instead, she chose to honor both lives, to acknowledge what she'd done, make amends where possible, and spend her human years helping others understand that transformation doesn't have to be permanent." He paused, looking at the faces in the crowd. Some were vampire pale, others human warm. All were listening intently. "This institute continues her work. We don't force anyone to choose humanity. We simply offer the choice to those who want it. And we support them through the transition, because becoming human again is just as difficult as becoming vampire in the first place." In the year since Rachel's transformation, 43 vampires had undergone the cure. 37 had survived. 6 had died during the process, a tragic reality that Dr. Strauss was working tirelessly to improve. But those 37 were living proof that vampirism wasn't a permanent sentence. They were teachers, writers, artists, parents, people reclaiming the human lives they'd lost or never fully lived. "Eleanor left me her legacy," Alex continued, "but it's not just mine anymore. It belongs to everyone here, everyone who's chosen to honor both the monster and the human within themselves. Because that's what this institute is really about, acknowledging that we contain multitudes, that we're capable of both darkness and light, and that we always have the power to choose who we become." The applause was thunderous. Alex stepped down from the podium, and Rachel was there immediately, taking his hand. "She'd be proud," Rachel said quietly. "She'd be amazed. She never imagined her cure would become this, a movement, almost. A way for vampires and humans to coexist more honestly. Well, she raised you right. Taught you to see people instead of categories, choices instead of destinies." Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that still thrilled him with its simple human warmth. "And she brought us together, in a way. Her legacy connected us." "Best inheritance I ever received," Alex said, kissing the top of her head. Dr. Strauss approached, a slight smile on his weathered face. He'd chosen not to take the cure himself. He was one of the vampires who found meaning in his immortality, who saw his extended life as an opportunity to help others. The first candidates for this month's procedures are arriving tomorrow. 5 vampires, ranging from 40 to 400 years old. All of them ready to choose humanity. "How are you feeling about the new protocol?" Rachel asked. Dr. Strauss had refined the cure significantly since her transformation, improving the survival rate from 60% to nearly 85%. Confident. Cautiously optimistic. Terrified I'll make a mistake. Dr. Strauss's smile widened. The usual cocktail of emotions. But that's life, isn't it? Human or vampire, scientist or patient, we're all just doing our best with incomplete information. Elder Marcus, no longer an elder, just Marcus now, joined them, moving with the careful deliberation of a mortal 75-year-old. The council sent their regards, by the way, and their reluctant endorsement. They still don't like the cure, but they've accepted it's here to stay. What changed their minds? Alex asked. Time, mostly. And evidence. When Cassandra Voss herself took the cure 3 months ago, it sent a message. Even the hardliners are questioning the permanence of vampirism. Marcus looked around the institute with satisfaction. This is what progress looks like. Messy, controversial, impossible to ignore. Cassandra had indeed become human again, though she'd done so quietly, without fanfare. She'd sent Rachel a letter afterward, a brief note saying simply, "You were right. There are worse things than being mortal. Like being immortal and empty." As the reception continued, Alex found himself thinking about his grandmother's final journal entry, the one that had started all of this. I've lived long enough to understand that legacy isn't about what you leave behind. It's about what you set in motion. The choices you enable in others. The possibilities you prove exist. I'm leaving you more than journals and blood samples, Alex. I'm leaving you a question. What will you do with the knowledge that transformation is always possible? That monsters can become human, humans can become monsters, and the only constant is our ability to choose. He'd answered that question by building this institute, by helping Rachel and dozens of others reclaim their humanity, by proving that Eleanor's cure wasn't just a personal miracle but a universal possibility. But he knew the question would keep being asked, keep being answered in new ways by each person who walked through these doors seeking transformation. That was the real legacy, not the cure itself, but the courage to keep choosing, keep changing, keep becoming something better than what you were. Rachel tugged on his hand, pulling him toward the windows where the sunset was painting the sky in brilliant colors. Come on. Best view in the house. They watched the sun set together, surrounded by people who'd chosen to transform, to change, to embrace the complexity of being neither fully monster nor fully human, but something in between. Something real. I love you, Alex said quietly. I love you too, Rachel replied. In this life and whatever comes after. Human, mortal, beautifully temporary love. And as the last light faded from the sky, Alex thought about his grandmother watching her own sunsets, grateful for every day of her reclaimed humanity. Thought about the 43 vampires who'd had the courage to make the same choice. Thought about Rachel's hand in his, warm and alive and real. This was Eleanor Carter's legacy. Not just a cure, but a question. Not just an answer, but an invitation. The invitation to choose, to change, to honor both the monster and the human within, to live fully, knowing it will end, and to find meaning in that very impermanence. That was the gift his grandmother had left him. And now, standing in the institute that bore her name, surrounded by people brave enough to accept that gift, Alex understood what legacy really meant. It meant passing on not just knowledge, but hope. Not just solutions, but questions. Not just life, but the courage to choose how that life should be lived. And in that moment, with Rachel beside him and Eleanor's memory surrounding them, Alex knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. Human. Mortal. Beautifully, impossibly alive.